So what it did essentially is we're going to divide up Africa among all the European countries as well as America. Period. America gets Liberia, and everybody else gets everything else. So the major powers, which would include let's see, I think there's a map coming up. Yeah, right. So Spanish Morocco, let's see, Canary Islands, Spain, Portugal, Liberia goes to America. Let's see, Britain, France, Germany, Italy, and then if you see in the lower left-hand corner where it talks about mandates, these basically when they were former German possessions and essentially they lost them as a result of losing World War I. So you can see sometimes the Europeans also divided up two different countries. So for example, French Somaliland, British Somaliland, and Italian Somaliland. There is there's two references to the white man's burden. So there's the Rudyard Kipling poem, and there's a movie with Harry Belafonte and John Travolta, which, when it played here, I have to confess, well, I'm not confess, it's not my fault, it's an observation. Whenever, so do you notice in the movie theaters that Flight isn't there anymore? Yeah, the Denzel movie. Here, it's the Eugene Black movie syndrome. The longest movie that I've ever seen that had black actors in it in Eugene that lasted actually 2 months in the theaters was Waiting to Exhale. Any other time in Eugene, and so this isn't a pattern. This isn't a pattern that happens with other cities, mind you. So, the Eugene Black movie syndrome is if it's got a black actor in it, it's there for 2 weeks and it's gone. So check it out. I mean, when did that movie break? Is it there now? No? Ain't. So, same thing with this movie, White Man's Burden, which was actually directed by a Chinese director, I believe. So, when I saw it, so black people thought it was a comedy, and we laughed, right? But white people didn't feel so comfortable about it. So what it was a photo reverse of America, okay? Where Harry Belafonte plays a rich black guy in Beverly Hills, and Beverly Hills is all black. And John Travolta is his gardener. And he lives in what we now know as South Central, in poverty. And basically, like I said, it's a photo reverse of America. And so, you know, Harry Belafonte is talking about how John Travolta's lazy and they live in the ghetto and, you know, they don't value marriage, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, like I said, a photo reverse of America. So, yeah, white people would not be digging that. But it's a comment on the whole thing of a white man's burden, which basically was this is, if you look it up in the dictionary, white man's burden, based on this poem from Rudyard Kipling, is the supposed responsibility of European civilization to civilize the rest of the planet. And so what happened when this poem came out, it was published, so Rudyard Kipling, you know, Jungle Book guy, Mowgli, all that kind of stuff, The Elephant's Child, Just So stories, wrote this poem. And so the white man's burden goes like this. If you see this graphic, so you have Uncle Sam being carried by a black man, African slave, John Bull of England, That's who that is, right? The equivalent of Uncle Sam. The Kaiser, also being carried by a black man, and then bringing up the rear looks like a French tricorn. It could be Italian too. Right, so this is all basically talking about, okay, the supposed responsibility of Western civilization to civilize the planet, the white man's burden, pear soap. Through teaching, the white man's burden, the first step towards lightening the white man's burden is through teaching the virtues of cleanliness. Because cleanliness is next to godliness. And, here we have guy with pear soap handing it to who? A savage. Right? Because the savages don't take baths. Right? Cleanliness next to godliness. This originally appeared in McClure's magazine with as a caption for the poem. So you have, the white man's burden. So here you have, a dead body with shoes sticking out, a grave. Here you have this is a U.S. canteen, Teddy Roosevelt, climbing up the hill to the schoolhouse, carrying a savage, big lips, wild hair, a spear, grass skirt, and the white man's burden is to carry the savage up the hill to the schoolhouse, to civilize him. Hopefully there's a bathtub there with pear soap. And this is the graphic from the movie, which you might be able to get on Netflix. I definitely suggest if you want. I thought it was funny, hella funny. As a photo reverse, I think it would have been different, like with Spike Lee doing it, but Spike Lee did Bamboozle. So hey, white man's burden, and also the Confederate States of America. That would be good to view as well. So, the white man's burden. Take up the white man's burden. Send forth the best ye breed. Go bind your sons to exile, to serve your captives' need, to wait in heavy harness on fluttered folk and wild, your new-caught sullen peoples, half devil and half child. Take up the white man's burden, in patience to abide, to veil the threat of terror, and check the show of pride. By open speech and simple, 100 times made plain, to seek another's profit and work another's gain. Take up the white man's burden, the savage wars of peace, fill full the mouth of famine, and bid the sickness cease. And when your goal is nearest, the end for others sought, watch sloth and heathen folly, bring all your hope to naught. Take up the white man's burden, no iron rule of kings, but toil of serf and sweeper, the tale of common things. The porch ye shall not enter, the roads ye shall not tread. Go, make them with your living, and mark them with your dead. Take up the white man's burden, and reap his old reward. The blame of those ye better, the hate of those ye guard. The cry of hosts ye humor, slowly towards the light. Why brought ye from bondage our loved Egyptian night? Take up the white man's burden. Ye dare not stoop to less, nor call too loud on freedom to cloak your weariness. By all ye will or whisper, by all ye leave or do, the silent, sullen peoples shall weigh your God and you. Take up the white man's burden. Have done with childish days, the lightly proffered laurel, the easy, ungrudged praise. Comes now to search your manhood through all the thankless years, cold edge with dear-bought wisdom, the judgment of your peers. Now, this might have been unremarked, except that it became, read on the floor of the U.S. Senate as an exhortation for the United States to basically take up the white man's burden and invade, free Cuba, Puerto Rico, the Philippines, from the burden of the Spanish, who were, of course, mixed race, even though they were European, the white man's burden. So, Benjamin Tillman, although coming at the most opportune time possible, you might say just before the treaty reached the Senate, or about the time it was sent to us, there appeared in one of our magazines a poem by Rudyard Kipling, the greatest poet of England at this time. This poem, unique in some places, too deep for me, is a prophecy I do not imagine that in the history of human events, any poet has ever felt inspired so clearly to portray our danger and our duty. It is called The White Man's Burden. With the permission of senators, I will read a stanza, and I beg senators to listen to it, for it is well worth their attention. This man has lived in the Indies. In fact, he's a citizen of the world and has been all over it and knows whereof he speaks. Take up the white man's burden. Send forth the best ye breed. Go bind your sons to exile to serve your captives' need. To wait in heavy harness on fluttered folk and wild, your new caught sullen people, half devil and half child. I will pause here. I intend to read more, but I wish to call attention to a fact which may have escaped attention of the senators thus far, that with 5 exceptions, every man in this chamber who has had to do with the colored race in this country voted against the ratification of the treaty. It was not because we are Democrats, but because we understand and realize that what it is to have 2 races side by side that cannot mix or mingle without deterioration and injury to both, and the ultimate destruction of the civilization of the higher, and you know who he means by that. We of the South have borne this white man's burden of a colored race in our midst since their emancipation and before. It was a burden upon our manhood and our ideas of liberty before they were emancipated. It is still a burden, although they have been granted the franchise, that is the vote. It clings to us like the shirt of Nessus. You familiar with Greek mythology? No? Nessus was a centaur who taught, I believe it was Hercules, or taught a Greek hero, and was murdered, and he told, as he was dying, to soak his blood in an animal skin and then give it to the person that had killed him, and his blood would torment him. So the shirt of Nessus, that's what he's talking about. Free blacks are like the shirt of Nessus. They're tormenting us. Clings to us. They're giving them the vote, freeing them, emancipating them. That's the people in the South. Clings to, a mistake that clings to us like the shirt of Nessus. We are not responsible because we inherited it, and your fathers as well as ours are responsible for the presence among us of that people. Why do we as a people want to incorporate into our citizenship 10 million more of different or differing races, 3 or 4 of them? But we have not incorporated them yet, and let us see what this English poet has to say about it and what he thinks. Take up the white man's burden, no iron rule of kings, but toil and of serf and sweeper, the tale of common things. The porch ye shall not enter, the road ye shall not tread. Go make them with your living and mark them with your dead. So, yeah, start here, or basically stop here, and go into midterm prep, and then we might be out early. You down with that? All right. So, these are preferred answers. So, Alkebulan is the indigenous name for the continent the Greeks called, of course, the Africa. Kemet and Egypt are names in 2 different languages which both mean C, land of the blacks. 10 Commandments resemble what Egyptian principles? The Declarations of Innocence, or 42 Principles of Ma'at. Whoever said Principality of Ma'at, no. Nubia is a Kemetic word which means land of gold. According to Naim Akbar, how many parts are in the African self? We already did that, right? So those 5. 4 Semitic languages with sigh of satisfaction. So the mnemonic, Aramaic, Arabic, Amharic, and Hebrew. And where does the word colonization comes from? Christopher Columbus's actual name, Cristobal Colon. The African name, the Taino reported for the gold alloy that the spear points were made of, guanine. So 14-karat gold would not be the correct term, even though that's what it is. That's what we call it today. Name, let's see, the constructs of race can be devised for distributing power and access in society. Name 4, so the indigenous 4 directions, the 18th century European, Oid, Caucasoid, Mongoloid, Negroid, which gives way to the 20th century Federal 5+, White, Black, Hispanic, Latino, Asian, Pacific Islander, and Alaska Native, American Indian, and of course, other. That's where the plus is coming from. And Western science, biological, 1 race, the human race. So 4 constructs of race. Number 10, Tulipit Kisinep, also known as the long-reaching land, was commonly known by its inhabitants as Turtle Island. What was it known as? Now Cabulon, Atalanta, and the Circuit of the World. So either one of those would work, or most of you chose E, primarily A and B. Say peace in the 4 Semitic languages: Hebrew, Shalom; Arabic, Salam; Amharic, Selam; and Aramaic, Shalama. The Aztec saying from which Mexico takes its name, Mexica Tawi, all my relations. Which country in the New World abolished slavery first and elected the first black president? Mexico, not America. The name of the former slave who designed the Mexican flag and freed slaves throughout Mexico, including Texas, Vicente Guerrero. Enumerate the 6 isms: overt, covert, microaggressions. Type 3, unconscious institutional. Type 4, conscious institutional legal. 5, type conscious institutional illegal. And 6, socio-structural violence. The elements of crash: classism, racism, spirituality, religion. Also, well, you could also substitute colorism, but age, ability, addiction, sexism, heterosexism. 17, name the Viennese Freemason who was posthumously desecrated and stuffed, placed in a museum, Angelo Solomon. 5 of the 7 Afro-Europeans, I accepted any of them, plus any ones that you dug up. Beethoven, Charlotte Mecklenburg-Strelitz, Thomas or Alexander Dumas, the father or the son, Père ou Fils, Joseph Haydn, Ibrahim Ganabo. A lot of folks missed this one. According to the Register Guard article in the 90s, the oldest book in the world is, well, you said the King James Version of the Bible. That's not what they said. And I believe everything that's in the Register Guard. So, C, an Egyptian Bible dating back to 450 AD, currently in the British Museum, known as the Aramaic Peshitta. Peacemaker for the Iroquois Confederacy, You can read his name. I won't speak it in honor of their tradition, just referring to him as the peacemaker. Somebody else put something else, so if you're going to persist with that answer, give me a reference. But Six Nations says him. Name the 6 nations of the Iroquois Confederacy: Onondaga, Oneida, Seneca, Tuscarora, Mohawk, and Cayuga. 5 civilized tribes: Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Creeks, and Seminoles. 3 black patriots, which you named a bunch of different ones. This is what I got off the top of my head: Benjamin Banneker, who was the architect that laid out Washington, D.C., Paul Couffet, Crispus Attucks. 24 is false, and Black Oregon pioneer, you named, technically Marcus Lopez wasn't a pioneer because he didn't stay here long enough to live, but I accepted it. But George Washington Bush, that works too. So this is where we're going to go next term is basically we're building the means of power for African American society in America. And because it's in America, what this idea is, if we understand what a construct of privilege is, a construct is put together. And privilege, if you wanted to reinforce that, you'll need basically what we call the ivory tower, right? So the ivory tower contains the means of power in a particular society, and that there are gatekeepers that only allow you in using the correct password, the correct language. So as an example, when I've used the example of microaggressions is like when people make a appointment with me and then walk in and say, oh, you don't look the way you sound over the phone. Well, I don't know. I look and sound the way I sound. I'm speaking the Queen's English. So, because I learned that in the ivory tower, because that's the way of power in the society. You have to speak intelligently and back up your references and all that. So, this ivory tower confers privileges, and in its shadow, people live. Remember, I'm not an art major. So people live in its shadow. And what they will often do is create within this world, in the shadow of this privilege. They don't have privilege unless they go through that gate. They create their own sanctuary. So even though you have a sanctuary, you still feel the chill of the shadow. So in here you have, if you can go through that gate and pass the gatekeeper, you can have privilege. But if you don't do that, then you basically live in the shadow of privilege, and you have to create your own world outside of the shadow. So part of what begins to happen for African Americans in the time period starting in Reconstruction is basically creating that sanctuary in place in America. So sanctuary is created, and whatever you want in terms of looking at the response. So what James Baldwin referred to as the sunlit prison cell of America. The African American experience, down from the pyramids, out of slavery into segregated and constricted space called freedom. We live in the shadow of America, but must make our own warmth and healing up from slavery, coming up from slavery. So next class, aspiration, continues into the world we were able to make in and of America, a world hidden in plain sight, within the shadows cast by the light of white supremacy, where we create a larger humanity, and hopefully soon that larger humanity expands into the ivory tower. So, you're up. I will give you 15 minutes. Yeah, you can leave them here because you have to. Yeah, you definitely have to be done by 10 of. And after that, here are the finals. Okay. So those of you out in cyberspace, I will actually, instead of what the syllabus says, putting it up on Saturday, I'll actually put it out today on Moodle. All right? So do the evals, and I shall return in 15 minutes. It'll only take you 5 minutes to do it. Thank you. It has been awesome. I hope it has been good for you too. Oh, one last thing. The final is due a week from today. Close of business, 5 o'clock. Any outstanding papers you have are also due then too. All right?
Sorry, what was that date again?
The, what is it, the 5th?
So, yeah, it was Wednesday, you said, or?
It's Wednesday, yeah. Week from today.